It's our bite-sized events on maximising your 365 investment. So this is the second in a series of 4 webinars that we're going to be completing. As mentioned earlier, my name is Lewis. I'm a Senior Client Relationship Manager here at Enhanced and a Microsoft 365 evangelist. So today's agenda, it's going to be fairly quick because we've only got 20 minutes today. So a very whistle-stop tour on who we are and kind of what we provide to our customers. Understanding the kind of what you get within your 365 licensing and whether you're making a full kind of benefit of all the tools available. Then looking at individual productivity tools that you may have not seen in 365 previously, and then onto device management, identity information security, and then finally a Q&A. So who's Enhanced? We are a Microsoft IT provider. We've been in the business for now for 30 years. We're also an employee ownership trust, but predominantly we work with companies to look to maximise IT to kind of move the business on and grow their own businesses. So we look to work with businesses across 4 key areas. So looking at IT security to make sure we've got a good underpinning for any IT services that business has. And then looking to push that growth of the business via collaboration and making sure that we're looking at efficiency gains, not just from a cost perspective, but also looking at time efficiencies with productivity tools available to us. So looking at Microsoft Business Premium, so this is the kind of licensing set that the majority of our customers here have at Enhanced, but would be the similar situation for people on M365 enterprise SKUs as well. So the majority of people that have transitioned into 365 predominantly used Exchange Online and Teams and the Microsoft application set on their desktops as their kind of dip and toe in the water. Some businesses have then kind of gone that little bit further and started to look at Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. But today we're going to be looking at a wider set of the application set, so everything that's highlighted in blue. So again, I'm trying to give a selection of tools from the Office 365 suite, Enterprise Mobility and Security, which is around device and information protection, and also the Windows licensing that you get in there as well with 365. So a quick slide on here is a number of applications that we see in a lot of businesses where actually you're already paying for, a similar equivalent within Microsoft. So we've got SurveyMonkey here, Calendly, Facebook, Asana, Monday, and Notion. And then we can look at their Microsoft equivalents here. So we've got Microsoft Forms, we've got Microsoft Bookings, Viva Engage, which is more of an internal social network for businesses, To Do, Planner, and then Microsoft Loop. I'm not going to go into detail on Microsoft Loop today, but for those that have used Notion, this is kind of effectively kind of a workspace that you can work collaboratively on a particular project, or have your own individual workspaces similar to OneDrive, but kind of moving it that one step forward. With Notion as well, if you're working on, say, a number of documents that have got shared text, you could bring that into the forum and people can edit that text within Microsoft Loop without having to go into those individual documents. And now we're going to cover a few productivity tools within 365 and look at how they could tie in to each other. So here's a real world example from one of my customers the other day. So they messaged me around a particular requirement where they take a lot of calls when they're on the road. They want to set out a task that them and one of their administrators can then work on collaboratively whilst they're out and about for the day. My response back to them was maybe to look at Microsoft To Do. So either within the Outlook app that he could use on his phone when he's kind of got a spare minute, or back when he's in the office to use Microsoft Outlook on his desktop PC. We'd also discuss kind of call recordings and how that could work for him as well. So now we're going to go into how To Do and Planner can work for both personal tasks and for kind of more product orientated tasks. So first of all, we'll look at To Do. So here's my Outlook. So I've got To Do available in the Outlook application. So as mentioned before, I'm going to create a list. So a list is a set of tasks that I can then have the ability to share with a third party. So for instance, in this user case, I'm going to basically create a task. So a customer needs Wi-Fi in their office. I need them to someone to speak to the customer to get their plans ready for the wireless, for that business. So I've created the task here. It's quite urgent, so I need that done for tomorrow. And then I'm going to share that with another individual within the business. So in this case, I'm creating a link and I'm going to send that across to my internal. So his name's Luke. I'm going to send that across to him now. That's now been sent. Now he has able to see that list within his to-do as well. So if we go into Planner, I'm going to create a webinar prep session within here. So I can create that as a new plan. I can then share that with the relevant individuals. At the moment, I'm adding Alex Major, who sits in our marketing team. I can then create a task, a review of this presentation, then assign that to that individual user. So moving on to video learning content. So this scenario is a case that a business wants to create a video library of learning content bespoke for a business. So we're going to look at Microsoft Clipchamp. So this is a recent acquisition from Microsoft and it's a small video editing solution. Whilst maybe not used end to end by one person to create and generate this content, it may be used by, say, marketing to use Clipchamp. Then move that video into Microsoft Stream, which is an equivalent of your own private YouTube. Then into Viva Learning, which could be your content platform for both learning tools that you've created as well as tying into third-party tools. So as part of the basic licensing, you can get access to LinkedIn Learning and also Microsoft Learning tools. With the premium plan that you can add on, you can then tie that into other third-party learning platforms. And then we can announce that on Viva Engage, our social network internally, to say that there's new content available. So here's Clipchamp. So I'm quickly creating some content here. So we've generated our company background to start the video. Then we've done a screen capture using Clipchamp, which we're just now added into there. We're now going to export this content. We've got the ability to export this content either locally or straight into Microsoft Stream. So from here, I'm going to go straight to Stream because we want to have this held on Microsoft 365. That video content has now been analysed and I've done a transcript. So I've got all of the text that's generated from all of the audio content. With that, I can then do closed captioning on the video. So if we want to have anyone that's hard of hearing or we want to translate that into another language, we have the ability to do that. From that transcript, I can also use Copilot to summarise that video. So we want to have some text to go alongside our video content in Microsoft Learning. So we've generated that now. So we're now going to move to Viva Learning. So this is the Viva Learning platform. As I said, it's a mixture of content, but in this case, we've now uploaded that into Viva Learning for our private engagement. And then we can go into Viva Engage to now do an announcement. So this is our marketing, where we do our announcements of marketing exercises that we do internally here as a business. On to Microsoft Forms. So this, as I mentioned previously, this is an equivalent, say something like SurveyMonkey. So we can send out forms either internally or externally if we want feedback. So in this case, I'm going to do a quick form based on webinar feedback. That content then can be exported as a Microsoft Excel file, which we can then also push out via Outlook. So we could create that to a mailbox, which could be scraped using Power Automate. So Power Automate can look at the content in that and then push that content into a usable format. And we may push that to, say, Power BI to do reporting on that content. So here's Microsoft form. This is a form that we've created previously for an in-person event. So this is one that we would have previously printed out, but we can convert that quite quickly into a Microsoft Forms page. So I'm just quickly generating it into a number format that Microsoft Forms can understand. So just numbers and letters for each of the questions. We're going to go into Microsoft Forms and do a quick import. Upload that Word document that we've just generated. And that will now convert that form into a digital format. So you can see all of those questions are pulled through in exactly the same way that we had previously identified. You can do this manually, of course, as well. With Copilot, I have installed. I can also use the design tool to kind of generate something that's equivalent and more closer in style as to what we want as a business. Once I've completed that, I can then collect responses. So in this case, I'm going to push this out to anyone to respond to this. I have the ability to copy that link and generate a QR code, which I'll show you in a minute that I've completed, or push that out via email. I've now clicked through to this link, so I'm now providing feedback, which is a very media kind of average feedback, given the issues we've had at the beginning. That's probably fairly conclusive. That's now been exported, so I can now view the format for that. I can look at that as a total feedback or each individual response. And as I mentioned previously, you can then download that into Microsoft Excel. So with the content that Excel has here, as I mentioned before, that could be then scraped using Power Automate to then use that content in a more useful fashion, so provide reports that can be reviewed by the wider business. So a couple of quick seconds, if you want to use the QR code, that gives you access to the Microsoft form that we just generated in that demo just previously. Great, and moving on. So we're going to look at Microsoft Bookings. So there's a couple of use cases for bookings that I use myself. So I use it within LinkedIn for people to provide kind of ad hoc meetings that they want to join with me. I also do a session with one of my customers where I do a drop-in session. So people are able to book my time on the day that I'm on site there. So you're not limited to a single booking per person. You can create a number of different bookings that are relevant for that particular requirement. I spoke to one of my customers that was looking at potentially doing a public viewing for a property, and they could have pushed out Microsoft Bookings to those individuals to book times and slots for that viewing session. As mentioned before, here's my LinkedIn page. You can see there's a book and appointment section. That's using that link back to the booking page that I've created previously. So I can then fill this in, and which will generate me a email and calendar invite. Here's that calendar invite, which I can then accept and put into my calendar. So going into bookings, we're just going to quickly generate a brand new booking here, one for the webinar for any particular feedback of people having individual questions they want to ask following this event. So we're putting in our business type, inviting staff. So it's only been me in this case, but if you want to set up a whole team that you're able to book, you can complete that. So if you've got, say, a sales team that you want anyone to book any of their time, you can do that as well. I'm going to make this public for anyone to be able to engage with this. So that's now created that new bookings page. I can then customize that as I wish to. So one of the particular customizations I like is the ability to put a buffer time in. So if I'm on the road, I don't want to be in a position where I'm booking meetings back to back. So I can put a buffer in of, say, half an hour, 2 hours, something that's relevant, give it limited access availability. So actually I only want to take meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays, leave the rest of the week free for myself. We can add all of our business information, particular logos, if it's a particular content that we want to generate as well. So again, same as the Microsoft Forms page, here's a quick QR code if you want to quickly look at how Microsoft Bookings works, and you can book any time in with me because that's a live bookings page. Also, as mentioned before, the Q&A is open if you want to ask questions whilst I'm doing the webinar. So yeah, feel free to drop any questions in or for Q&A at the end. Moving on from productivity tools to some of the other functionality within 365. So as kind of in the first screenshot that I provided, we have the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. So this is a whole set of tools for device and information management. So device management, I say, and some of you may already be on this journey and using some of these tools, but I'm going to kind of go from the bottom up. So for device management, that doesn't just mean your company-owned devices. So we've got what's known as Microsoft, or we've got mobile application management. Mobile application management is really useful for both bring your own devices and company-owned devices, but what it allows you is to say, actually, if it is a bring your own device, we will allow you to access to your email, but we're going to block access to SharePoint potentially. And if you're using email, it must use the Exchange app, and we have the ability to wipe the data, the company data from that Exchange app. So it's providing those controls, checks and measures that you're actually not kind of providing too much data to personal devices. We also have a number of customers that say, actually, for the majority of individuals, we don't want any access via personal devices. We want to not kind of provide a culture where people feel that they need to work outside of business hours. And then moving on to device management, if you want to fully control devices, both laptops, desktops, and also mobile phones, we can enroll those devices into Microsoft Intune. Gives us the ability to remote wipe those devices, control what applications, what backgrounds, all the things that we traditionally would have done via group policy can now be mirrored in the cloud, so we don't have to be tied to having an on-premise server anymore. And then identity information security, again, a hugely growing area of discussion for my customers. So for the majority of customers that are now moving to a principally Microsoft 365 environment is the use of identity management via Entra ID. So this replaces your traditional on-premise domain controllers, but also gives you a wealth of other functions that you can do to provide that secure single point of access. So moving on to single sign-on, if we've got multiple cloud applications that we're using, so for instance, you've got a cloud accounting application, or you might have a cloud HR application, we can use single sign-on if that application supports. Basically what it would do is tie all of the login information back to 365, and then we can control that login from your initial 365, making that super secure using things like multi-factor authentication, and then we'll discuss conditional access in a second. And then give access to all of those cloud applications. So people haven't got to remember multiple passwords, have multiple forms of multi-factor authentication. And also if that user leaves the business, we can cut off all their access from that single point. So moving on to conditional access. So this is a really, really powerful tool. So what this allows us to do is basically block and provide access based on a number of signals. So this may be using company devices. We mentioned actually blocking devices based on whether they're company or personal owned devices, who the user is and what role they have, so using security groups. Also what location they're in, so you may say actually we only provide this access if you're on a secure location, but if you're working from home, limit the access. So this provides, and what a lot of businesses now looking at, is just enough access. It's making sure that we're not kind of locking down individual files and folders, it's providing it at the top level. And then from an information protection standpoint, we've got a number of tools within the Microsoft Purview suite. So we've got data labeling, where we can label emails, all your Office applications based on what's known as a sensitivity label. So for instance, we may have a sensitivity label for internal data. So with that, once that data is labeled as internal, you can have that encrypted. So no one else can log, if they were to download that file and give that to a third party, they wouldn't be able to open that document, for the reason that it's encrypted and will require login and basically confirmation with 365 that you have access to that document. And then we can use data loss prevention policies to enact certain policies that you would have traditionally, say, in ISO, that may be a written policy. So for instance, with this internal data policy label that we've put in place, we could say that if a document is attempted to be sent to an external user, say via email, that is reported back to either a director, or if you've got an information control officer within the business, that someone's tried to do that and block the action from happening. Okay, finally moving on to kind of what this all means for businesses. So this is the big balancing act that all businesses have now, is how much do we lock down the applications that our users use and the data that we have that provide them. If we lock down everything within an inch of its life, but we don't give enough kind of productivity tools and functionality to our users will try to find that elsewhere and start to use applications that are outside of IT's remit and security, providing a level of concern. And also your users are not going to be happy. Being in that kind of siloed environment, you may actually end up in a position where individual teams are using different products and you haven't got that access of data across the whole business then. So there's a number of kind of ways that we can work with our users, either polling them, but they may not be kind of happy to provide that data, or you've also got the option of what's known as Microsoft Cloud App Discovery. So if we've got firewall logs in the business, we can upload those into 365 and we can run what's known as Cloud App Discovery. And what that will do is provide all of the SaaS applications that we may be using as business and our users. And we can look at all of those applications that aren't company sanctioned. And then we can have a discussion on what tools will be a better fit moving forward longer term. So it's not to say that you have to use the Microsoft tools that they offer, but actually in a lot of cases you're providing them the same functionality for less money, and we can just have that single set of tools within the 365 environment. Great. So any questions from anyone? Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. So does Intune work on Apple products? We have some people on Android phones and others on Apple. Yeah, so you can enroll both Apple Mac devices for OS X or OS Mac or Mac OS as it is now. You can also do iOS and iPad OS and also Android. There's different setups that you will need to do for each of those, but they're all listed in Microsoft Learn, and we can also assist with you with kind of working on that as well. Okay. And just to let you know that if you want to have a look at all of the applications that are available in 365, you can go to the portal.office.com and that will show you all the available apps that you've got within 365 currently. Will this webinar be available to watch after it's finished? Yep, absolutely. So we're providing a copy of the link to this. We've also had a question around Intune. So Intune is only available on business premium licensing, not business standard. So there's massive benefits to going with business premium over business standard. It's not just the Intune piece. It's the Enter ID piece for joining machines and creating conditional access policies. So for instance, with multi-factor authentication, without conditional access, we can't enforce multi-factor authentication. We have to accept that users are going to set it up themselves. So yeah, business premium, well worth the investment. And then if you're the team using Teams, should we be looking at Planner instead of Team Up? Yeah, absolutely. If you're using another product, look at Planner. There's two versions of Planner. So there's the basic one that you get in Business Premium. You can use Planner within Teams as well. So if you've got a particular team, you're creating a project for that, you can add in a planner for that. So you could have everyone within that Teams channel and then create your tasks within there. Thank you all for attending today and look forward to seeing you at our next event on security. I say you will have kind of emails around when the dates are for that particular event, but hopefully you found today's session useful. Thank you.